Okay, hey everyone, welcome to The Field Between. I'm Ahmed.
And I'm Yasmin. And we're here today to roast the daily. Before we get into that, we'll give you some life updates. How are we doing, Ahmed? Wow, long foreboding pause.
I don't know.
Tell us how you really feel.
I'm in pain, but we're getting over COVID, and now we are going to Egypt tomorrow, so we're just getting things ready for that.
You're in a lot of back pain. Ahmed is so used to dealing with pain that it's actually kind of hard to tell when he's in pain. Mm-hmm. So it's helpful to have you say it as a reminder.
Yeah. I think when we get back, I'm going to just kind of press my doctors to actually order some MRIs, and I told you my new theory of my pain is I'm going to look at this. I got to get some blood tests, but I saw a post on Twitter of Celine Dion just kind of people. I think it's maybe something from her documentary or something that just came out about her. But apparently she has this thing called stiff man syndrome. And it's just it's a weird autoimmune thing that's normally in women more than it is in men. And it appears between the ages of 40 and 50, but sometimes there are signs earlier. And what happens is that your body, your muscles just kind of really just seize up in a really painful way. Which is something that I experience with some of the muscles in my body. Sometimes my chest will seize up and be incredibly painful, or
your arm.
Suddenly I'll get my arm where my hand.
It's one hand in particular, right? And one arm
it's
in
my
particular.
right side. It'll just pull my wrist down and locks in that position.
And sometimes it'll even visibly be twitching a muscle. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's these really weird fasciculations that hurt. So I'm wondering if I have some sort of mild form of that.
For a very long time, we've the thing is, you definitely have chronic pain, and the thing that's so frustrating with so many chronic pain conditions seems to be the difficulty in finding a diagnosis. So for a long time, we've kind of thought that perhaps there is some larger diagnosis, but we just haven't found one.
They keep saying it's stress.
It's not just stress. I don't believe that. I'm sure stress doesn't help, obviously, but you seem to have very different life stages I've seen you go through since we've been together. Yeah. And regardless of other things that are going on. Yeah. Obviously during periods of high stress, it doesn't help. And
I will say the lower back hip thing, I think, is just from a previous injury that I had in college. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't have health insurance at the time, so I couldn't see a doctor. And I think
you didn't have health insurance through your college? Isn't that mandated usually? Or it was too hard to navigate?
I did, but student health wasn't going to do x-rays and what I would have had to go to some other place, and I was just, I don't know if student health insurance would have covered that at the time. It's probably my fault, but I just didn't.
It's not your fault also. It's
I don't
want
to get a $5,000 hospital bill.
Yeah.
But yeah, I played soccer, and I remember one time I just ended up falling. I was in the air and fell directly just on my hip. And for the next for the next 2 weeks, I couldn't really walk without, I had to borrow a pair of crutches from a friend. And I don't know if I fractured it or what, or if it healed improperly, but if it healed improperly, that can cause some
the other really obvious thing is that you've had spinal surgery, and there is the other working theory I think that we have, and there might be more than one thing. There might be some kind of chronic condition and also the spinal surgery, but that another one of your what are they called?
Discs.
Discs could be giving out.
That's in the upper back.
But do you think, it seems to me, I don't know anything medically, but it feels like that could be connected to other parts of your body spasming potentially, or just overcompensating different muscles. I feel like that might be connected.
These are all good questions that I wish a doctor would ask.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
But I feel like it could be maybe two things happening, both issues you've had for a very long time that run in your family with your spine, and then maybe something else too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the first thing caused something that is now a separate issue. Who knows?
Yep.
Yeah. It's a puzzle, and the American healthcare system does not make it easy to solve.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Are you? I don't want to put this man on blast, but I haven't seen you pray for a while. I don't know if the Adhan is going off on your phone.
It's because I had my ringer on because we were expecting a call from a friend.
Oh, and you don't normally have like
usually it's just his vibrate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I prayed this morning. I haven't prayed for a long time. It felt good and centering because I woke up feeling like very anxious.
Yeah.
And it was kind of nice and grounding. I never actually do this, but I always have like a fantasy version of myself where one day the first thing I'll do when I wake up is pray and then do yoga for 15 minutes, which is so basic, but and like not get on my phone. But that's like a strong goal of mine. Yeah. I feel like this last time period, this last like month has just been so floaty. Like there's been so much going on, like most of it joyous, like the move and also the wedding and now Egypt. And I'm super excited for Egypt. Like I'm very genuinely like fired up and excited in a way that I wasn't earlier because now it's like actually here and we have an itinerary. We've got plans.
Should we check the weather? For Egypt? Hold on, while you...
But what I was gonna say is that I'm missing routine a lot. And I'm missing like personal growth goals, and I'm very excited to get back from Egypt and just kind of like have a schedule.
Yeah.
We also saw some friends this past week, and I was like, oh man, we haven't seen people for a while because of COVID. Like it felt really good to like try and connect. And
yeah. I don't think we can do this again.
No, we messed up a little bit. It's not the end.
Too much going on.
It's not the end of the world, and it was somewhat like. It's also tricky because like I wouldn't take away any of one of those three things. So it kind of was what it was. But I think we will be more thoughtful going forward to like not overschedule ourselves to this extent because I think we both like routine to a little bit, and I'm missing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weather's not going to be that bad, actually.
Really?
It's going to be in the high 90s, like to 100, but it's not going to be like 110.
I guess relatively speaking, that's something to be grateful for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I was going to say other updates. We've been working on, or I've mostly been working on 2 zine projects, which has been super fun. I love curating stuff, and it makes me feel really happy to have like a project to work on that's creative.
Yeah, you put out Tabajjal's put out 1 zine.
Yeah, which I have to say, my co-creator Wad, I think it's okay to say her name, is entirely did that one all by herself. She killed it. But this one we're working on together.
Yeah,
which is
and
fun.
it was printed. It looks great printed, and I think people were excited about it. And I think at least one friend who we know of, I would say his name. Actually, I mean, I don't know. Okay, we can say.
Yeah.
Sebastian. It was his first like actual publication, and now he's getting published in a lot of really great publications.
Which is so cool to see.
Out. Yeah, it's incredible.
No, it's fun.
So
I think for a lot of folks, I mean, there were some people who've been published before, but for a lot of people, we really kind of wanted the Art Collective to be that kind of platform where it's like low barrier and it's a way for people to explore without like, I don't know, without like just doing it for the sake of it, I guess, but like to have a place to like really take risks, and that involves not always being good at something or not being an expert in something. So yeah, and having said that, I obviously think that they were all really great quality and really enjoyed them. And the submissions this time have been lovely. The topic is food, and it's just such a like, for lack of a better word, such a triggering topic, I feel, for so many people. And it's tied to so much of like culture and just kind of like aesthetics. And it's been really interesting to see what people have come up with. I really like
Interesting. Well,
yeah.
I'm excited to see it.
Yeah. And then I'm also helping out with a local zine here in Pittsburgh, which is a kind of curation of just people in Pittsburgh who are in solidarity with Palestine, kind of just reflecting on the moment, reflecting on, it's called Pittsburgh for Palestine, so that's sort of the theme here. And we're helping to put together a second kind of Palestine poetry and arts night where the zine will be sold for donation. So getting excited about that. Still have to get, I mean, I have you locked in, obviously, which is good because you'll be doing chai. And I also might have you help us MC a little bit, but have to figure out the performers and stuff before we go to Egypt. So yeah, but it's been fun.
I sent you my submission earlier today,
which was lovely. I'm not going to edit it because I'm not editing anyone else's.
I think it needs to be edited.
I don't think it needs to be edited. I thought it was really beautiful.
We'll let the people be the judge.
Okay. They can say if they think it should be edited.
Well, by then it will be too late.
That's true. So, it'll be published.
Yeah.
What kind of things are you excited to get back to after Egypt in terms of routine?
I'm excited to I've been doing some research with the pain stuff to kind of just put into practice some new things in my workout routine. I think every once in a while the pain kind of just like beats you down to the point where you start avoiding certain movements. And I think I have been doing this, but I'm excited to keep doing it when we get back, is adding the movements that I want to do back into my workouts and into just like daily life. So I've gotten to the point where like I don't really, I don't know. It's all very like lateral. I don't do like any contralateral sort of movement.
What does that mean?
But I don't, it's just like things across the body, bending, twisting.
Okay.
So all my movements become like kind of stiff.
As opposed to things that like involve more like larger muscle groups kind of, or that might
more
interact with
compound
pain
movements,
points.
things that like rotate your body, require some like twisting and all that. But I did squats today, but I did like, fairly lightweight with like a full range of motion, and I haven't done squats in a long time.
Is that something that hurts your hip?
It's something that I think, you're just like a lower back hip. It's like, it's uncomfortable. So the point is to try to just kind of like touch the precipice of that like discomfort.
Right. You don't want to like overdo it and create more pain. But you want to also not let those
obviously like
muscles atrophy.
You do the same movement, but you decrease the load significantly. And it's, trying to get back to it.
Got it.
There's some isometric stuff that I need to try. But yeah, so that's that. I'm hoping to get back to writing.
You want to get back to writing for the Substack, which you were pretty dedicated to. I feel like you'll have a lot to say after Egypt. That'll be interesting to reflect on there.
Yeah.
And then you also want to have an outdoor caravans ride at some point this summer, right? In August.
Yeah, although I don't know when we'll do it in August because we're also packed then.
We're a little bit less packed.
We're
doing the Palestine poetry event when we get back.
That's the weekend we get back.
And then the next weekend your sister's here.
My family's going to be here, and then we're
weekend
going
after
to a
that?
wedding.
Yep, you're right.
We're going to Washington or Oregon.
Oregon, yeah, for my best friend's wedding, which we're excited for.
So, yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, we should pick a date because I feel like there is a date in late August.
Maybe we can do it the weekend before my family gets here.
Let me stop myself from pulling out the calendar now. But yes, I think, that's the Palestine poetry weekend.
Is it? I thought
that
was the week. No, that's the weekend we're back, right?
We get back. We have a full weekend, which we need to recover, I think. We'll get back like Saturday. The next weekend is Palestine poetry.
We get back on the 2nd.
We get back on the 2nd. So that weekend is clear. The 2nd is a Friday. We're staying in DC, and then we're driving back to Pittsburgh Saturday. Oh. Sunday we'll just be recovering. The next weekend, that Saturday is Palestine.
For the listeners, they're listening to us go through our schedule.
It's good. The next weekend is Palestine poetry, and we've got a friend from North Carolina who'll be here performing, which is going to be super fun. Katie. And then the weekend after that is Oregon, and the weekend after that is your family. So,
oof.
I have written August 31st, salon ?
Okay, maybe that'll be the...
Yeah, and then maybe we'll do my birthday, I think that would be good. Like that Sunday or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so like you said, we are going to listen to... I haven't listened to this because I don't listen to this podcast, the New York Times Daily. The one after the debate, to kind of just highlight how normal people talk about what they've been seeing with their own eyes and how it's reported in kind of mainstream media. Before we get there, I like a couple of things I think we should hit. One is I need to say this. This is a strong stance I have. I was reminded of it as I was walking out of the mall a couple days ago. I feel like white people should not... We need to revoke their dog-loving privileges.
Not related to anything, but okay, continue.
Yeah. No, this is just thoughts.
Just like an important thought. Okay. Yeah.
White people should not be able to have dogs anymore.
Honestly, I agree. They're too excited about their dogs. It's excessive. I mean, okay, there's some sweetness. Like we know some people, we have some friends who like their dogs with their life, and it's like very lovely, but they also care for other humans.
Yeah.
Where we draw the line is white people who care about dogs but not humans, which is kind of common.
Yeah, so it has gotten to the point where I think white people care more about dogs and animals than they do about actual living people. So I was walking out of the mall the other day, and I was just going to my car, right? And I had a mask on because I was just like getting over COVID, you know. Anyway, so I walked past this car that was pulling out of the lot, and there was another guy who was walking into the mall from the parking lot. And the woman's like, "Is that your dog?" And I assume she's talking to the man who just got out of his car. And I was like, "Oh, did he leave his dog in the car?" Or whatever. He ignores her. I walk past to get to my car. And then as I walk past her, she's like, "Okay, good talk." And I was like, Are you talking to me? She's like, "Yeah. Is that your dog?" And I'm like, she kind of like just gestures to a parking lot of 300 cars. And I'm like, and I was just like so caught off guard that I think I just like, and I was tired. And I was just like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Like, I was just kind of, and she's like, "That dog." I was like, I don't have a dog. And she's just like, "Okay, bitch." Like, she just calls me a bitch.
Oh my gosh.
You fucking whatever. And she says a bunch of other things. And then she like drives off. And I was just like,
very
so
strange.
confused. Cause like, I'm like, it would maybe make some sense if you saw me getting out of my car going into the mall.
Right.
But like, I'm
just to assume that a random
mall.
person is
like,
associated with the dog. Yeah.
Why would you? What's connecting me to this dog that you saw in a car? Are you assuming everyone walking out of the mall is this dog's owner? Like, what do you?
Dog vigilante.
What's your plan? It's weird. Anyway, so I'm not saying you should like leave a dog in a hot car. And like that should be okay.
Just that it's not the greatest human rights. I mean, it's not the greatest rights issue of our lifetimes.
But also, like, what's the aggression here? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's not my dog.
Yeah. You've been harassed a lot at this mall. It's kind of been an ongoing thing.
So it is the same mall where like I've gotten death stares from the Israeli skincare kiosks for wearing a keffiyeh to the mall, which is obviously easily explainable.
It was super funny because actually at one point we went and this woman was like staring at Ahmed and I was like, I think this lady's like checking you out. It like felt very aggressive.
Yeah.
And then Ahmed was like explained and I was like, oh, that makes sense too.
Yeah. That it's almost like reverse birthright where they come here to sell skincare
What's
products.
the name of the brand again? It's so random.
I think they operate under different brands everywhere.
Okay.
We had them at like the mall in Greensboro and like,
that sucks to like have to like go abroad and get stuck to like, I mean, Greensboro is actually kind of a cute place, but just very random.
Yeah.
For skincare missionization.
But it reminded me of, I don't know, maybe I'll slide a clip in here, but this was a couple months ago, but the Daily Show segment, Jon Stewart's back doing the Daily Show on Monday, and he does his first segment.
We talked about this a bit, yeah.
Yeah, he does his first segment on Gaza. And at this point, the death toll has been confirmed to be like 30, 40,000. And he gets through this interview with like Murtaza Hussein, who's like a journalist with The Intercept. And like, I can't remember the other guy's name, but he was a Jewish reporter from The Atlantic. And he gets through a segment on Gaza. And he's joking, he's happy, he's like jovial. He's like, "Oh my God, look at this Muslim and Jew getting along. Like, isn't that crazy?" And then they wrap up the segment. He does like this like tag to the end of the episode where he talks about his dog who just died.
Yeah. He's like in absolute tears.
My man cannot make it through a single sentence because he's just like so choked up on tears. And I'm like,
yeah.
It's just like white people have just like projected all of their humanity or like their ability or abstracted their like love for each other into animals.
A couple thoughts on that. I mean, I still love The Daily Show and I'm happy it's back and I watch it not like religiously the way that I used to, but fairly regularly. But that episode was really disappointing. I mean, it could have been worse, but it was very much like, especially the whole like, look, a Muslim and a Jew talking about this as if it's primarily a religious conflict, which it's not. Yeah. And they found like people with pretty milquetoast, moderate opinions, like not particularly interesting takes. And again, it just is such a false binary. Like we are in community and organize alongside. I mean, I wouldn't say I like do a lot of organizing, but we try and like help organizing, or at least I do, with a lot of folks who are Jewish. Like there actually is a pretty interesting dynamic divide within the Jewish American community right now. So it's not really like a Jewish Muslim issue. But yeah, to have him kind of like cover that and then break down when talking about his dog was pretty rough.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I can't remember. It was a 3-legged dog too, right? Wasn't it? This is my other thing, is that anytime you see a fucking 3-legged dog, it's only with a white person. Like,
Ahmed's had this theory for a long time that they're intentionally.
Is that they have a mill where they just saw off dogs' legs
for sympathy,
to get them adopted, or like white people are just like paying extra to have their dog
to have like a dog that's kind of a little fucked up.
It makes them look more charitable.
You are right that I have never seen.
If I go out onto Liberty Avenue and I kick a homeless person, and I kick a dog, like, people would probably jump on me for kicking the dog more than they would the homeless person. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's fucking. How did we get here? Like, I don't. Something is wrong with people. Anyway, sorry, white people, you've lost your dog privileges until further notice.
Fair enough. My one other little update before we get into the daily episode is that we went to Picklesburg, just chronicling our downtown lives.
And we accidentally dressed like pickles.
We did. It was so embarrassing. Everyone was wearing green, and we were also wearing green,
but fashionably.
But we did not mean to wear green for Picklesburg. But I'm sure that would have seemed like a bald-faced lie if someone asked us, because we were perfectly coordinated.
Cute that everyone dressed up for.
It was super cute, honestly. It was one of those things, though. Downtown is just so disorienting because, like, there's never people here, and it is the most people I've ever seen in one location in Pittsburgh ever. Well, it was absolutely packed.
It's 3 things going on. It's the Pirates-Phillies game.
Yeah.
Picklesburg.
And that
anime convention.
But we were specifically just at Picklesburg.
That's true, but I think they're getting a lot of like
crossover. That's true.
From the Phillies Pirates game, especially.
We had a pickled cannoli, which was decent.
Yeah.
And then I had fried pickles, which were not as good as my favorite fried pickles in the world, which are at Queenie's in Durham, North Carolina. But they were decent. I mean, hard to mess up fried anything. And then we had a grilled cheese sandwich with pickles, which is pretty good. I did want to try, but we were too full. There was pickled cotton candy, which seemed kind of interesting.
Yeah, that would have been.
I tried their pickled potato chips covered in chocolate. They weren't pickly enough. The contrast wasn't strong enough. So yeah,
that's a bummer.
That's my overview of Picklesburg. It was cute.
Okay. I think. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
I was gonna get to the segment.
Yeah.
And then at the end, I think there are a couple of Israel-Palestine news items that are pretty pressing that we should get to. But
do a brief overview of. So, kind of the Daily is, I think, probably the most popular media podcast that there is.
I think maybe the most listened to podcast
in the U.S. Yeah. I don't listen to it all the time, but I listen to it fairly regularly. So in terms of like media landscapes, I would say Ahmed is like pretty far left. And I maybe like,
I don't know about that.
I would say that. I think
I listen to kind of some far right podcasts just to see what's going on.
But that's kind of also like classic, isn't it? You're so far left, you start coming out around the other end.
No, that's fake. I listen to it because I'm like, I'm interested in what people on the right
I mean, that's
saying.
why I listen to like evangelical commentary. So I hear that. But I mean, I like a lot of the podcasts that you listen to, and I listen to some of them myself now. Foreign exchanges, I love. You turn me on to that, and that's excellent. Like commentary.
It's really good analysis.
If you want like analysis, especially of like, I mean, I feel like as Americans, we're quite siloed, and we often don't really get very good foreign news coverage of, especially events that we're not like directly involved in. I mean, as like the current Rome of the world, we are like involved with most conflicts in some way, one or the other. But there's still a lot of coverage, like particularly of places like Sudan and Bangladesh that like I don't hear much about, and I would like to learn more. And this is a great resource for that.
Shout out Derek Davison.
Yeah, you also listen to Bad Faith, which I like. You listen to the Brunigs. I'm not that into Chapo, but they've got some good segments. So that's kind of your media landscape, I think, right? I still skim the Times. I know I'll probably get some hate for that, but I do skim the Times most days. I skim the top headlines. I listen to NPR Daily, and then I would like to try and like read Al Jazeera. That's not currently part of my media rotation, but I think that would be good for me to try. I should see if they have a good like podcast. There's like.
You should listen to Sana Saeed's
That's
Backspace.
True. She's great.
YouTube.
Yeah, I should do that. I've heard one or two of her things, and they're always really thoughtful.
Yeah,
she's got great analysis, but I should try and like incorporate that more into like my regular rotation.
I mean, I don't think like just by virtue of like listening to.
Is there like a notification thing?
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting notifications. Someone sent me a text. I don't know who this is.
Intrigue.
Says, "Hey brother, can I talk to you?" Oh, I know who that. Okay, never mind. Okay. I think just listening to the thing itself is not bad, right? Like it just depends on your media literacy.
Totally,
it depends
I agree.
on like what level of criticality you're listening to it with. Like I will also look at New York Times. Like it's not a
I think people get a little bit too virtue
Financial
signaling.
Times. I think those are really good papers to read. But
I think people get a little bit too extreme when they're like, you should not support the Times. And it's like, well, like realistically, the Times has a lot of resources to put into certain types of reporting. As long as that's not your only news source and you have a critical eye, I think it's still, fair. I would go a little further and say that like, I'm pretty for reading like very broadly, and I don't really believe in like ideological purity with reading. Like someone who will be unnamed wanted to censor me and remove my copy of Hillbilly Elegy. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
From
we'll get on that later.
From our bookshelves.
We'll talk about that later. But
it's a terrible book, but you should read it.
I think for me, what the Times and papers like it teach you is what Empire is saying, right? Like the same way that the Financial Times, it's interesting to read because it is kind of the mouthpiece of the capital class in the US and like abroad also, like.
And the Times does have resources to do some really incredible investigative reporting. Yeah. I think we've shouted this out before, and we can put this in the show notes, but Mona Shalaby, who's an incredible journalist that Ahmed introduced me to, who does, what's it called? Like kind of like visual journalism? Is that the word?
Viz.
What is it?
Data visualization.
Data visualization, yeah. She's talked about this kind of conundrum of like both critiquing the Times for their awful coverage of Gaza, but then also wanting to work with them because they do have resources to kind of like get, if they actually put the resources in the right places to get certain kinds of reporting done that otherwise wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The thing that bothers me is when people put the Times on a pedestal.
I used to do that a little bit. I get it because I grew up in New York just like with my parents getting it, and I felt like, yeah, but you're right. Yeah. I mean, the same paper that promoted like the Iraq war and the lies of weapons of mass destruction, especially their foreign affairs coverage, should not be taken without a large grain of salt.
Yeah.
So all of that preamble over, this episode I have listened to and I thought it was hilarious, and I want to hear Ahmed's reaction to it. So we're going to play it and react in real time.
So we'll see.
It's called A Brutal Debate for Biden. It was published right after the debate, and it was published on June 28th.
So this one's 38 minutes long.
We won't do all of it. We'll skip around a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just tell me when to skip, but I'm starting it from the beginning.
And I'll just kind of wave at you whenever I'm ready to talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
From the New York Times, I'm Michael Barbaro. This is The Daily. Today, in the first debate of the 2024 presidential race, Joe Biden hoped to make the case that Donald Trump was unfit to return to the White House. Instead, Biden's weak performance deepened doubts about his own fitness for the job. My colleague, Estet Herndon, a political reporter and host of The Run-Up, explains what happened.
I love the dramatic music. It's really fun.
It's really dramatic. Also, the sound presence is great. I got to figure out what mics they're using.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. Keep playing?
Yeah.
It's really a very tender hour.
Was for President Biden to kind of live up to the caricature of him that has been created over the last 6 months by Republicans. In the first 10 minutes, he was not even just a poor debater. He seemed like a struggling old man.
Okay,
in
pause.
a way that...
I would just kind of off the bat say this idea that Biden being mentally unfit, kind of the fact that he's not fully present in some moments, the fact that particularly after 8 p.m. he seems to struggle, the fact that they're kind of framing this as, well, previously this was just a Republican caricature, but now we see that there's some weight to this is already kind of ridiculous. If you've read any kind of like media analysis that is not the Times, there have been so many gaffes recently with Biden like repeating the name of like a French president that was like decades ago, or he's just like gotten so many names wrong. There's also so many just like little clips of him like visually kind of staring off into the distance, having to be rerouted during kind of like meetings with other leaders. So none of that should have been super surprising.
Yeah. I mean, even since the 2016 race, I mean, when he was debating Bernie, like people were just like, hey, this guy is forgetting things that he said just a couple minutes ago. he does this whole thing where he's just like, oh, come on, man. Like, he just started to trail off, and people are like, he's a little old, right? Like,
as is Bernie, but yeah.
Yeah. And then again in like 2019, 2020, when the campaign was like gearing up again, it's just like.
But it's certainly gotten worse, I think, the last 2 years in terms of just like, particularly saying like the wrong name of a leader who's been dead for decades.
But my point is that even in the last 2 years, like, people have been saying this for a long time, that like Joe Biden is too old, and the Democratic Party has just absolutely ignored that like for such a long time, and they've called everyone who brought it up ableist. They call them, children, impetulant, like, like every name under the sun. Like, they smeared them as like Bernie bros, or like, and tried to make it seem like because of his association with Obama, that they were also like somehow like anti-Obama and like racist, or like just white Bernie bros, right? Like, and so it is kind of, I think a lot of people feel indignant over the fact that they're just now starting to pay lip service to the fact that this is an old man. And there is some feeling that like, hey, you've at every turn when you could have actually done something about this at a time that made sense and refused to do so, you kind of have to lie in the bed that you made at this point. But I don't know.
I mean, I will say, I think there's been calls for a long time to kind of, I mean, when Biden also first ran, he said that he was going to run for only one go.
He didn't, actually.
Really?
He gave the impression, but he's never on record saying that he would ever be a one-term president. But
really?
he did heavily imply that.
Interesting. I didn't realize there was like a distinction there.
Yeah, there's never actually a record of him saying that.
Oh, okay. So here it says that he declared he was a bridge to a new generation of leaders.
Yep.
And a transition candidate, but did not specifically promise to serve only one term.
And I think something to gesture toward that was why he picked Kamala Harris as his VP.
Right.
She's much younger. And,
yeah. I will say, though, I mean, I know that you have a lot of strong feelings, which is fair, and rightfully so, about how the DNC pushed Bernie out of the race. And I think that's totally valid. But Bernie is also really old. I mean, Bernie, Trump, and Biden is kind of like ridiculous that like on every like edge of the ideological spectrum, the only kind of candidates that we have are like these older men who are like way too old to potentially be president.
Hillary.
Just like, yeah. I would love to see, I mean, I don't think electoral politics is going to save us, and I don't really believe in like representational politics as like the only solution, but I would love to see at least like someone a little bit younger.
We need a younger man.
Yeah.
I don't know. Bernie's a whole different story because he's just been disappointing in a lot of other ways recently. But this is about mental and like physical fitness. Mostly mental, and Bernie still seems mentally like.
I just still think
sharp.
That he is. I'm
not saying I want Bernie.
Yeah,
to be president,
not to be ageist, but I feel like at a
this
certain point you should transition to like actually being a mentor and not just holding on to power and trying to cultivate like a younger generation of leadership. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's
Okay.
hear more.
Keep playing.
Mm-hmm.
Think for a lot of people was alarming, not even just in a political sense, but in a personal sense. And I think then the low bar that had been created for him for tonight's performance, it immediately raised alarm flags that he was not even clearing it.
Well, let's talk about what both Biden and Trump were trying to do in this debate before we return to the question of how Biden did or didn't do and how Trump did or didn't do tonight.
You know, for Trump, there is an electoral opening right now for him to really create a coalition that's unique for a Republican candidate. If you believe the polling or the kind of trend lines that we have seen in polling over the last 6 months.
What'd you say?
I think you can skip a little bit if you want.
Okay.
Donald Trump is not with
1,000 trillionaires in America. I mean, billionaires in America. And what's happening?
And then we got to one answer that was literally incoherent.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President
God.
Biden, President Trump.
And eventually ended.
We finally beat Medicare. That was actually the first time I've heard that clip, but I've heard people reference it. What do you think is happening? Like, just if you read the media reporting on stuff between the lines, what do you think is happening? Do you think this was like a engineered moment where the DNC is like throwing Biden under the bus and, you know, they're trying to get rid of him as its nominee? Or do you think that they thought he would do better than he did?
I think they thought he would do better than he did. I think otherwise they wouldn't have.
But it's kind of like throwing him to the wolves, right?
Yeah.
Where like what I read underlying all of this commentary is that this is a moment that they finally decided, like, oh, we cannot win with this guy.
Well, I mean, they haven't fully decided. I mean, there hasn't been but yes, like there's at least now the allowance of conversation about it.
Well, on a side note, people are saying, and there's like been a lot more reporting in the last week that he is going to step down.
Pelosi has been apparently like putting out feelers, and Obama has not said that Joe shouldn't step down. And apparently he's feeling pretty isolated and upset. Biden is.
And for a lot of these reports to be happening, right, like speculating, he's going to step down this weekend, actually. So maybe even later today we could hear something.
I've heard some speculation that it might be after he meets with Netanyahu. I forget when their meeting is happening.
Wow, but they need to not give conspiracy theories like more fun. Like, the timing is so bad. But these reports, these kind of like speculative reports, I feel like would not be happening if someone on the inside track in the media did not have something a little bit more concrete.
Oh, completely agree.
Or
I think
like,
they're meant to create like an atmosphere that is preparing the public for a potential outcome.
Yeah, they're foaming the runway.
And that's why Biden's so upset. There was a Times article, I think yesterday or the day before, about the fact that like, and this makes me almost feel sympathy for him, though I think ultimately like he's been, you know, obviously is responsible for a genocide and doesn't deserve our sympathy. But it's just like this old man who currently has COVID, who's like in his house, like watching like all these people that he thought supported him and like kind of like enabled him to think that he could get to this point when they should have stepped in earlier. Mm-hmm. Now kind of like turning against him. It is kind of like, it feels very, I don't know, almost like a Shakespearean epic or something. Like,
oh, it's definitely like a tragic story.
Yeah.
Like, it's this guy who suffered huge loss early in his life, right, with his son and his wife dying, and then he also, I mean, he's like fairly scrappy. It's not like he doesn't have like Ivy League pedigree,
right, in the way that most presidents do.
He did all these scams to work himself up to the Senate and continued to do scams in the Senate and supported a bunch of horrible policies, but it's good on some labor stuff, but he was successful in the thing that he did. And he was kind of, as a vice president, kind of a beloved figure because he was fairly like goofy.
Yep.
People saw him as kind of like a grandpa figure who like hung out with Obama and they were cool. And instead of being this like paternal or patriarchal figure that kind of goes out on the right terms, he's just been like totally beaten down, and his legacy is going to be this like sundowning man,
and then also Gaza,
who did genocide, and that's going to be it.
And anyone who's watched, which I'm sure is a lot of us, like someone that you love age, it's just hard to watch someone else kind of age in the public eye, like just knowing kind of the way that looks up close and personal. You kind of like would wish for privacy or for more people to kind of step in.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. It's hard for me to have any sympathy for him.
That's fair. Absolutely.
Watching him. Yeah. I mean, he deserves every bit of suffering he gets.
But we're all going to suffer because he stayed in the race.
That's true.
But yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going.
Trailing off such that it became clear that this was not someone who was fully in command of their presence at the moment. And that really set the tone for Biden's performance throughout the whole debate.
Right, this was the moment, if we're being honest, where everyone in politics and political journalism's phones just started exploding with text messages, all of them saying some version of, oh gosh, this debate is going quite badly for President Biden. And I said to your point about what he was seeking to do and the assurances he was trying to give people in his party and beyond his party, he was not giving those assurances.
Again, I won't belabor this too much, but just the idea that this was some kind of like political storm and everyone's phones was going off, it just seems ridiculous given that there have been multiple incidents like this before the debate.
Yeah, again, this makes it very evident the fact that the DNC insiders and like a lot of these mainstream media who speak for them and use them as sources are just absolutely not in touch with anyone who could possibly push their party in a more progressive direction, right? Like they just don't give a shit, because honestly, if you're saying this is the moment, then you're blind or you're stupid. Like you really think that up until now, he's just been like killing it. He's out here doing bike rides, doing push-ups, like, you know, swimming 10 miles. Like what was your conception of what Joe Biden was doing and what he was like up until this point? Like,
and then there's also the really obvious point that not only has he shown signs of not being mentally fit, both he and, it goes without saying, also Trump. But then there's like also the larger moral issue of like, this is where you draw the line at like him trailing off on a sentence and not at like the violence that he's allowed to happen and sanctioned, you know? Yeah.
Again, this has been happening since Listen Fat. Do you
Since
remember
what?
that? Listen Fat.
No.
When he was just like out shaking hands during one of the caucuses or something, and someone had asked like, oh, hey, are you physically fit enough? Like, I think this was this 2016 or was it 2020? But someone, mentioned that, and he was like, listen, fat.
Oh.
And then he was like, let's do some push-ups right now.
Oh, that sounds very familiar.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's his like strategy to make it seem like he is not aging. Like he's been
To be kind of angry.
Yeah, he immediately comes out like the beginning of a sentence. He's like, "We're not gonna do that anymore."
What a
And then
stereotypically male strategy.
It becomes incoherent, right? Like, and
Yeah.
That's like his whole strategy. Except now he kind of does more of a whisper to kind of pull you in. He's like, "You're not doing genocide, man. Come on. We're just having a good time.
Uh-huh.
It's America, man.
Uh-huh.
This is a country that
This is like reverse ASMR. You're making the hairs on my back stand up.
we beat Medicare.
That's too much
beat
whisper. Too
Medicare.
Too much. Stop.
And I'm gonna be the president on nomination. And that's kind of his strategy. It's like he'll whisper and then he'll do like 10 words that he just yells.
Right.
And you're just like, oh, look, it kind of keeps you on your toes a little bit.
As someone whose sentences tend to trail off at the end,
Mm-hmm.
I feel some sympathy.
Feel sympathy.
Yeah.
Yeah. You do speak quickly and you mumble sometimes.
I
like
do. Yeah. I can be in control of it. Like when I'm teaching, I'm pretty careful because I've coached myself, or if I'm giving like a lecture. But especially when I'm tired, I really lose the ends of my sentences.
You just slur them all together.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in 4 years, someone will be telling, I'll be like, wow, I didn't see the signs. And then someone will be like, they were there all along.
Yeah. It's a warning tale
like,
of sleep deprivation.
Got a shawl over your lap and in
it's
a
really
wheelchair.
cute. No matter how tired I am and no matter how slurred my words are, the only person who can ever perfectly understand me with accuracy is my sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cute.
It's cute.
Okay. Were there any other sections you wanted me to skip to?
Nope. Keep playing. Actually, I'm going to run to the bathroom really fast. Can you find the next place that you won't stop?
Okay.
And then... Okay, we've got some
All right.
breaking news.
Yep. So we'll put the daily down. I think we kind of get the point there. But
I just left to go to the bathroom at July 21st at 2:05 p.m.
Yeah. This just in. Message from Joseph R. Biden. My fellow Americans, over the past 3.5 years, we have made great progress as a nation. He capitalized nation.
We are the nation. Continue.
But he said great progress as a nation.
I don't know. Continue.
Maybe this is honestly, again, I don't think you need to capitalize nation there. Today, America has the strongest economy in the world. We've made historic investments in rebuilding our nation and lowering prescription drug costs for seniors and in expanding affordable health care to a record number of Americans. We've provided critically needed care to 1 million veterans exposed to toxic substances, passed the first gun safety law in 30 years, appointed the first African-American woman to the Supreme Court, and passed the most significant climate legislation in the history of the world. I don't know about that. America has never been better positioned to lead than we are today. I know none of this could have been done without you, the American people. Together, we overcame a once-in-a-century pandemic. He should have hyphenated once in a century, but he did not. And the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. We've protected and preserved our democracy. Again, he capitalized democracy. It's just weird.
Should have hired Ahmed Amr.
They should not have let him type this himself. And we've revitalized.
Oh, I doubt they did.
Huh?
I doubt they did.
Yeah. And strengthened our alliances in the world. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve you as president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term.
Wow.
I will speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision. For now, let me express my deepest gratitude to all the people who have worked so hard to see me reelected. I want to thank Vice President Kamala Harris for being an extraordinary partner in all this work, and let me express my heartfelt appreciation to the American people for the faith and trust you have placed in me. I believe today what I always have, that there is nothing America can't do when we do it together. Weird hyphen. We have to remember that we are the United States of America. We just, maybe that might be just like a remember note for himself that he is in the United States of America.
Continue.
Okay, there it is.
Damn.
Just
immediate real-time
I just
reactions.
have to congratulate myself for predicting this all along, that they would replace this motherfucker for 3 years. It was only me and Alex Jones.
Oh my gosh, not great company.
He's going to be on the next episode, by the way, a team up. None of you could have
Never
predicted.
in a million years.
Actually, a lot of people are saying, not a lot of people, let me correct that. Some people are re-speculating that Hillary is going to be the person they go with. But
I don't
who
think
knows?
so.
I don't know.
Well, a moment of, can you insert your little congratulations? Yay.
There will be cheers.
This is a moment for Ahmed's prediction.
Oh
he was correct.
Dude, I feel so good about myself right now. I feel great.
He called early. You're like, whatever about the country, but I was right. But you were.
I was.
He called early on that Biden would drop out and be replaced at the convention.
Is that I was right.
That is the real, wow, this episode had so many twists and turns. That was the real conclusion. But let's make, now that we're on a roll and history is happening, let's make some other predictions. Okay. So now, do you think Kamala will take over the ticket and there'll be a vice president, or do you think there'll be a new ticket?
Actually, I will shout out Chapo. I think they had the most hilarious prediction is that Biden steps down, Kamala runs, wins, does 4 terms, and then they run Biden again when he's like 90 years old because he's only been a 1-term president. That would be incredible.
Okay, but who do we think is going to be on the Democratic ticket? I really don't know. I feel like it's going to be Kamala and like the whitest guy ever. Like, that's my guess. I wish it would be Roy Cooper. Is that weird? I would love for Roy to be the head of the ticket.
I don't know. Any kind of the white male governors they're considering now. I feel I have turned into a single issue voter in this election.
That's fair, yeah.
And there is no one in the party who I can think of who would stop the genocide.
I don't know. At least Roy Cooper was like down to meet with certain groups in North Carolina and stuff. I wonder if he would at least be better than Kamala.
But Roy Cooper, I feel like he did it. This was politically like the smart thing to do.
Yeah.
Is he meets with them.
But he doesn't change anything.
To show good faith.
Yeah.
But in all of his statements, he's like, yeah, we have to support Israel.
Yeah.
We have to blah, blah, blah. I mean, I think maybe he gestured toward a ceasefire, but I don't know.
But the gesturing towards a ceasefire is more than, I mean, it's not enough, obviously, but it's more than like Biden or Kamala would ever done.
But someone who just barely gestures toward it, once they're actually in any office of power, like, what are they going to do? They're not going to do anything different.
Yeah.
They may like wring their hands a little bit more over all the children who are dying, but at the end of the day, they're going to kill children.
I mean, I know Bernie's not far enough, but he's not anyway. It doesn't really matter. Obviously, Bernie's not going to go to it, but he would be better comparatively.
Mm-hmm. Who's your money on?
Not like who I wish it would be, but who do I think it will be? Yeah. I think it'll be Kamala, and then the vice will be like Gavin Newsom or someone like that.
Interesting. I feel like they have to. If I'm a DNC insider now. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's a bad look on the party if you don't run Kamala.
Right. It also, I think, could alienate some black voters. Not all, but...
But the thing is, if now's the time when you get Biden to step down and you're like, oh, we actually need to run someone who has a chance, I don't think that's Kamala Harris.
Her polling is up slightly, but you're right. It's not that much higher than Biden's.
So I don't think she's the person. So I think you have to run someone who is untainted by the Biden administration. And so I feel like they're going to have to pick someone who is like, I feel like my needle is back to Hillary.
I don't think so. She's too divisive.
Although she is not like untainted, obviously, like she has a lot of baggage with her. If it's not her, then it's going to be someone who is like a governor, like one of these white male governors. And then it's going to be like either, J.B. Pritzker.
Who's that?
He's in Illinois.
Okay.
Or
Gavin.
I don't know if Gavin Newsom wants it.
Really?
But I don't know. Maybe it could be Gavin Newsom, but also he's too polarizing because of he's just caught up in all this like Silicon Valley like madness with having passed like the legislation recently with Elon, that led to Elon pulling SpaceX. And
but
Twitter
I don't think that's polarizing.
California.
I think most Americans would back that, honestly. It's polarizing maybe with like donors. You're right.
He's too mired in the culture war stuff, I think, at this point.
I don't know. He also, I think, he's trying to do good stuff.
Pull someone out who's not been polarizing.
But who would that be? I think like
they
need someone who stands for something.
Either Pritzker or like a Gretchen Whitmer or...
Oh, she's weird.
She's kind of weird.
Wait, isn't she the one that was like really mean to her campaign staff?
No, that's Amy Klobuchar.
Oh shit, sorry, I'm confusing everyone.
Gretchen Whitmer's the one who there was like a plot to kidnap her.
Oh, the Michigan governor. Actually, I don't mind her.
Yeah.
Right, whereas the other lady was the Minnesota governor.
Yeah. Roy Cooper, I mean, I don't think Roy Cooper is like that far out of field. I think he would be a good candidate.
I might vote for Roy. I don't know.
My dream, if I could draft anyone,
you would draft Bernie, right?
Eric Adams.
Hell no.
Because it would just be hilarious. It would
Stop. No, Ahmed. Think about like our lives and wanting to be comfortable and maybe have a kid one day.
But if Eric Adams, maybe we'll get trash cans here. The stuff that they're doing in New York City right now is so innovative.
France of Europe.
Yeah.
No, who would you actually? I mean, you're not that invested.
Who would I want
in like national electoral politics?
So I think I've said who I think will probably get it. Who do I actually think will do a good job? I mean, they'll never. But like Keith Ellison. Rashida Tlaib. Yeah, I don't know if she.
Yeah, Rashida Tlaib, Keith Ellison, Ilhan Omar.
I think like a Keith Ellison, someone who's been in politics for like a long time.
But Rashida's done a killer job in Michigan with like different factions. Yeah. Ilhan also would be cool. But I mean, obviously these are like, we're never going to have a Muslim president. So.
Yeah.
All three of those candidates will never.
I mean, Keith Ellison is Muslim, so.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. All three of those candidates are Muslim. I genuinely believe with my full heart, we will never have a Muslim president in our lifetime. Probably never, honestly. This country could never elect someone who wasn't.
Who else other than...
I mean, will we even ever have a non...
I mean, my ultimate dream pick would be someone who's not even in politics.
Of course.
Be Matt Brunick.
Oh God, okay.
Then we'd finally have like a social welfare state.
But if it was someone in politics, I would go for those three candidates, like either Keith Ellison or Ilhan Omar or Rashida
I guess
Tlaib.
You could have like...
That makes it sound like we're just drafting Muslims, but... They're all pretty radical, progressive.
I
What?
mean, Ro Khanna's been around for a long time. Ralph Nader, that's actually who I would pick.
I don't actually know that much about Ralph Nader.
Ralph Nader would be, it would probably be my top three of people who are actually in politics would be Ralph Nader, Keith Ellison, and then...
I'm surprised not Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib.
Is that sexist?
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
wow.
I'm just curious why.
I guess I'm balancing some level of like people whose politics I like and what I think would be somewhat popular on a mainstream level. And I just think Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar have the same problems that like what's his name? Gavin Newsom and some of these other people have, is that they're too mired in like culture war stuff.
I honestly do think it's
not
because,
through their own fault.
I think it's because they're women.
It's because they're like,
but we're saying dream, so why not dream? I mean, Keith Ellison's not going to get it either.
Yeah, he's not. I mean, yeah, like they would be great. Sure.
Yeah.
I think they would be great, but I think in my head I was still trying to like make it somewhat of like a pick.
I see. That's fair. If this is like a weird thought, but like if we have a kid one day, inshallah, however we acquire it, do you feel like you'd be realistic with them if they'd be like, could a Muslim be president? Would you be like, no? I feel like that would be good to be realistic.
I would immediately disown the child.
For asking the question?
Yeah, I'd be like, you want to be the head of an empire? I'm sorry. This is not my child.
Wow, okay. Yeah. Tough love.
Yeah.
So you're not even worried about limiting their horizons?
Like, oh my God. My child is a DNC operative. Astaghfirullah. This is...
All right, y'all. So I guess, I mean, this was tumultuous. We'll have to check back in and see where it lands. We'll be following it as closely as you.
I mean, it's crazy that we're going to be in Egypt for this shit.
Yeah, that'll actually be really kind of interesting. I feel like it's always interesting to see about, well, one, it's just like refreshing to kind of be in different mediascapes, but two, it's interesting to see like reporting in the US when you're outside of the US.
Yeah, so I do think, so it does seem like the fact that he did it it's not that far in advance, but it is in maybe just enough time
for the convention in August
for them to go through a somewhat democratic.
That's a great question.
This is what tells me that they're not going to do Kamala Harris, right? This is what makes me think that they're not going to pick Kamala Harris, is that if they wanted her, they would have gotten to the convention. He would have stepped down at the convention, and then his delegates would have just gone to her because there would be no time to do any sort of like pseudo-democratic party nomination process.
But because they fucked us over, we didn't have an actual real primary. It's just going to be the delegates choosing for us, I guess, right? Like, we are not going to get a chance to weigh in.
Right. So Biden's going to release his delegates, but now there is time. I think the way I understand it is that there is enough time to be able to
petition the delegates,
realign those delegates now that they've been released, and a nomination can happen from like within the party.
But it won't be like, because I mean, you're not registered as a Democrat, but I am. I won't get a chance to vote for a primary contender.
It'll just be like
which is
the
kind of
delegates
fucked
voting.
Up, but whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's not going to be like another round of voting where you and I vote on anything, but that was never going to happen.
You're registered as an independent anyway, but yes.
But I'm actually registered Green Party now.
Oh, right. I forgot.
Yeah. But so that tells me that they're not going to go with Kamala Harris, is that they're just going to nominate someone else. Maybe she'll stick on as VP, but I think they're just going to...
Or maybe the reason why they didn't do that is to kind of give choice, just to kind of give like the idea that like, hey, this is still a democratic process. So maybe they'll be like Kamala Harris, insert white male governor, and then like another white male governor and a more diverse VP. That like there'll be two people that the delegates have to choose between, two tickets. That's potential too, I think.
Wait, say that again? I'm not sure.
In other words, maybe at the convention there will be two tickets that the delegates choose between. Or is that like leaving it too close to November? You think we'll get to the convention and there will be will have been chosen who the ticket is?
I don't.
Who's choosing? Just the DNC?
Yeah, the delegates.
But that's my question: are the delegates going to choose at the convention, or are they going to choose beforehand?
I think there's going to be some primary process
beforehand
running up to the election.
Okay, and then the convention will present that ticket.
I think it would show. I think what they're going for, what the Democratic Party is probably going to go for, is unity behind
a ticket.
a
That makes
ticket.
sense, actually, now that you're saying
So
that.
I don't think if they choose someone other than Kamala, I don't think she's going to contest it and try to get some of those delegates back.
Because
I
like
think
the
that would be a bad
Republican
look.
convention that just happened was horrific, but it was very much like a show of unity. So probably, especially with this last minute change, the Democratic convention will want to show something similar. Like we are all unified behind X ticket, whatever it is.
Yeah. They're going to stop giving Joe Biden the elixir of life that they've been giving him. And I think he's, so I'm going to go ahead and say rest in peace.
Oh, well,
Joe.
astaghfirullah. No one knows when people die, but you're just saying you feel like he's not going to have that top tier medical help anymore.
I'm saying they're going to stop giving him the adrenochrome
Oh God.
that they've been pumping him full of.
Don't wish individual people
I'm not
harm.
saying, I'm just saying
Yeah.
rest in peace.
Yeah. All right. Any last thoughts? I'm about to go jump on Twitter and read for a couple hours.
I don't know. We'll play some sort of salute march thing to play us out, but I
Play a
don't-
roundup of the greatest gaffes.
Yeah. Well, I do still want to get to the Palestine stuff. if
Oh,
we
my bad.
can
Okay,
do
go
that,
for it.
Since I don't really have much else to say on
No,
this except
I don't either. It doesn't seem as relevant now.
I'll play the cheers again. Is that I was right, and
All
that's
right,
the
continue.
takeaway.
I don't think you're going to be right about Hillary, though. So that was the second part of your
Oh,
prediction.
boy.
We'll see.
Get
If
ready
you
to-
are, I will bake you a cake.
If I am,
Wait, let's say now. What do I owe you if Hillary is
man,
the nominee?
I'm gonna get you a
Ahmed
T-shirt.
loves being right. Okay,
I'm gonna get you a
continue.
T-shirt that says "I'm married to the smartest man in the world."
A deal. That seems fair. If let's say the specific parameters. If Hillary is made, which I don't think will happen, but if she is made the nominee, I have to wear this T-shirt and take a photo.
No, you just have to wear it
I just have to wear it.
around
Okay,
publicly.
for like a day.
We'll decide later. I'm not sure, but
Okay. All right. So Palestine updates. Let's do a quick
huge.
roundup.
I mean, really big ruling from the ICJ, right?
Right.
Like the top UN court, is that they found all the settlements in the West Bank. I mean, what everyone knows, illegal. The occupation of Gaza, illegal. The apartheid state, illegal. The wall, illegal. And these things are, supposed to be torn up. Furthermore, what they said is that any country is obliged to every country is obliged to not support Israel at this moment, right? So like what the US is doing is illegal. What other countries who are supporting Israel is illegal. It's a non-binding, obviously, a decision, which whatever.
It's still exciting, though. I think genuinely, like I know a lot of people have felt a lack of faith in international law because there is no ability to like prosecute, because we live in a kind of a nation state system and there isn't like an overarching power or justice. But I am surprised that even this happened. So I mean, it feels like some sort of win, even if just morally.
Yeah. I mean, yes, definitely like a moral win, which I think is meaningful in some sense. But what has Israel done since then, right? Like even leading up to the decision, I have a feeling they must have known it was coming, because they were attacking even more UN schools and UN camps. I think in the past when South Africa brought the initial ICJ case, so this is a different case than the one South Africa has, where they're trying to get a ruling on whether or not what Israel's doing in Gaza is tantamount to genocide.
Right. This is more just
So
about
that's
the
still
occupation,
going.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a separate case
About the occupation and the status
Yeah.
of the occupation. Yeah.
And even then, Israel was immediately like, "Oh, we're attacking like the Hamas bases, and the UN is actually run by Hamas. They attacked like the UNRWA
So ridiculous.
headquarters. They just like started killing UN aid workers, and saying that they're all Hamas militants. And even this time, you see the same pattern of them attacking UN schools and killing more aid workers and people who are affiliated with the UN. So it seems like Israel is just committed to like truly just undermining or like destroying any semblance of like international law,
Just ignoring
meaning
it.
something.
Yeah.
Well, but ignoring it makes it so that it's like it's delegitimized. Like,
Of
what is
course,
international
yeah.
order?
Yeah,
what is
absolutely.
international law? If
I mean, it honestly is kind of similar to the way that like the U.S. has never been brought before the ICJ, right? I mean, or I think was there Has the U.S. ever been brought before the ICJ for like, for example, like war crimes in Iraq?
No, I don't think so. I think it's only been like African countries and like Russia.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe some other Eastern European countries, but no, like no one's ever answered for those crimes. The other thing that's happened is that in the West Bank, Israel has essentially deputized every settler under, what's his name? Bezalel Smotrich or whatever. He's just like the far right guy in Netanyahu's cabinet. Incredibly horrible person. I think he's the one who's just like referred to people as like living like as dogs, and they need to be like totally wiped out and all that stuff. Like he said horrible shit. But he, even from the beginning of the conflict, they have been arming settlers. They've just been giving people guns to go and harass people who live in the West Bank. But now they have kind of truly set them loose in a way that I think it's just what we see happening in Gaza is soon going to be happening in the West Bank. They've just expanded the war. And the thing that Israel does is that it does deputize these settlers.
Yeah.
Inevitably, there's violence. We'll probably see an Israeli settler killed. And then they say, oh, this innocent citizen was murdered. And then that gives them cover to go in with the full force of the military.
Right.
And start killing indiscriminately.
Right.
So I would not be surprised if that happens, even after this ICJ ruling.
Yeah, it's really sort of cynical. I mean, obviously the situation is so much worse in Gaza, but I feel like you've got a good point, and also kind of reminding us how bad the situation also is in the West Bank and how increasingly like unlivable it's sort of become for everyday people, even to the point where before there had to be sort of a basic maintenance of some kind of normalcy in order to like use Palestinians for labor, but there's been more of an importation of like foreign sources of labor, and so it just kind of sort of rendering that population more and more disposable for the Israeli state.
Yeah, I this is the pessimist in me, is that the ICJ ruling does not symbolize a victory. It actually symbolizes like just the dissolution of an international order. Because how can an international court make that ruling and things only get worse and we continue to support Israel? We're going to double down on them. I don't know if it's going to be a Hillary type in the DNC or Gavin Newsom, but it doesn't matter who from the DNC. Trump is probably going to win. He just picked J.D. Vance as his candidate. All these people are highly committed to Israel. It's just going to get worse and worse. At the same time, we're just going to like withdraw from the international community while still supporting Israel. So I just have a feeling that this seems like the beginning of the end for like a true international order.
There never has been. I mean, that's the thing though. The ICJ is only symbolic. There never actually has been a mechanism for international law that isn't already based in, like, it's the same way that the Security Council for the UN is made up of states that have power, right? Like, and they have more voting privileges.
Have the veto.
Yeah. So it's I don't think it abets in anything negative. I just don't think it changes that much. You know what I mean?
But don't you think it's gonna like heighten? I do see. Yes, I do agree with you that it is like kind of a farce of an institution.
Or it's purely symbolic. Yeah.
But it also, I feel like, is going to create some sort of divide between, maybe we're getting back to like this like Orientalist takes, like East and West or whatever, but I do feel like tensions are going to be heightened with Iran and like Yemen and some of the Gulf states around this, and there's just going to be like
that's Orientalism. I think it's just states that have power versus states that don't, and like what kind of access to capital they have to leverage, and what kind of access to military they have to leverage.
What do you mean?
Like, I mean, I think like the US and like other kind of like large imperialist powers like China and Russia like are in similar situations. Like, I don't know. I don't really know what you mean by like, I don't think this is a Huntington-esque clash of civilizations scenario. It's like a clash of like access to capital and power.
If Trump wins and we have like a J.D. Vance and like I I guess what I'm saying is I do feel like this like new right conservative movement that's about to take power again, that is what they want, and that is what they will spin this into. And it very much feels like the lead up to the invasion of Iraq. Like,
I'm not sure exactly what you're arguing, I guess, to be fair.
Huh?
I'm not sure exactly like what you're arguing, which is okay if you're still thinking it out. But
Yeah.
are you saying like...
No, I'm saying that a lot of these states that previously would have tried to use some sort of diplomatic solution through the ICJ or like tried to find...
I see.
It's no longer going to happen because they're seeing that it's like, that's not even
I
a
don't think
possibility.
that the ICJ ruling... I think that it is helpful from like a legal perspective to create, and this is my limited understanding, but to kind of create like a blueprint, to create like a historical record. I don't think anyone is going to change their stance one way or the other because of this ruling. So I don't think it makes things worse or better. It's not like the US was ever going to see this ruling and say like, okay, let's be compliant, right? But I do think it has emboldened like some countries in like Latin America. Like, I mean, the fact that these rulings were even happening in the first place, or these cases were even happening, to kind of like form a kind of, I'm trying to say axis, which is like stupid American imperial rhetoric, but trying to form a kind of like alliance. And that's promising, you know?
And some of them already have, right?
Yeah.
Like you have like the BRICS alliance.
The what?
BRICS alliance.
Which is a kind of bullshit, honestly. Actually, I think that's pretty problematic and pretty imperialist, but yeah.
I mean,
it's like what? Like China, right? And Brazil. Is it China?
It's Brazil, South Africa, Russia.
So there's a lot of
India,
far right
China.
governments in there. I mean, India, Russia. Look, ultimately, you know my stance on this. Nation states aren't going to bring any kind of liberation. There has to be a new framework. But while we're stuck with this framework, I think more powers, I think a less unilateral world will ultimately long-term be better. So, however, I mean, and I hope that we get there with as little damage and fallout to everyday people as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was actually just talking to a colleague the other day about BRICS and how it just seems to be kind of like a new neo-imperial order. Like basically people being like, we want to be the new America, which that's not great either.
That's the thing is like, I don't think anyone in power is thinking in terms other than a nation state and expanding their own empire.
I think we got to think real local. I think you got to invest in the communities that you're in and use the leverages of power that you can. We're talking like
we do, but like the president of China and Russia and,
right.
and India, they're not.
Well, look,
thinking
when
like that.
when the U.S. ultimately falls as an imperial power, which it will, because all imperial powers fall, we would like to live in a place that is livable for us and for communities that we care about and are invested. So I feel like that's the project that we're personally invested in. Yeah.
Yes, but I think my ultimate feeling is that we are not going to break out like of the cycle of just thinking of how to use these massive war machines that we've built, and that they will just continue to be used. And some countries are going to say break with like whatever international order there is. People are going to see that the ICJ made this ruling. The US and Israel and all of its allies are going to continue to do what they're going to do. And they're going to say, oh, the only response to this violence is going to be more violence. It's not.
But I don't think that's enabled by the ICJ. I mean, there was
it's
no.
Not, I'm not saying it's enabled by the ICJ.
You're kind of making it sound like that, though, verbally.
No. I'm saying that it is not enabled by the ICJ. It is even in the. It's.
In spite of, like it shows how futile it is from your perspective.
Oh, we're throwing up our hands and we've tried all these diplomatic solutions and ways to pursue some sort of justice, and it's very clear that these are not the routes to do it. So like,
but the Houthis and Hezbollah already, I mean, especially the Houthis are already having armed resistance. It's not like they were waiting for a check from the ICJ or waiting for a sanction to do that.
No, they're not.
Yeah,
but what I'm saying is that
I don't think it makes a difference.
I think there are going to be more joining them. Is my feeling.
I think the ICJ bears no weight on that whatsoever. But yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right. Any last thoughts? Good roundup?
No, that's it. Rest in peace, Joe Biden.
He's still alive. Don't say that. Rest in peace, Joe Biden's presidency. I mean, I guess he's still around for a little bit longer, but we're definitely in the end days now.
All I ask is that give him one last shot of the elixir, roll his wheelchair up to a, top of a hill, let him see one last sunset.
This is a little mean, but okay.
let him feel the warmth of the sun on his face. This is the nice way to go.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's all I want.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.